So a couple of months ago, I ran my first ever 100 kilometers race. Actually 104 kilometers, 2,000 meters of vertical ascent over a mountain. So what's it like to run 100 kilometers? So a couple of days before the race, and no doubt about it, the nerves were getting to me. I mean, I knew that this was such a huge challenge, and the furthest I've ever run was 55. I mean, 55 to 104, it's nearly 50 difference, and it's a huge difference. Also on the vertical, I mean, I'd never done 2,000 meters ascent. I'd never done 2,000 meters of ascent in just walking up a mountain. So prior to race day, yeah, it was pretty tough going through your head through all of the different things that you needed, the kit, and then on top of that was the weather. Again, I've been training in sunny conditions, hot conditions, been ready for that, and the weather turned, the rain came, and it was rain predicted and cold. So being prepared for those conditions, 100 kilometers in the rain, that was pretty daunting. But hey, so went to bed early the night before, I think sort of 9 o'clock. A little bit of sleep, I mean not a ton of sleep. Woke up at 3, had all my kit all prepared, so I knew exactly what I was doing on race day. Got to the start line fine, and yeah, great atmosphere at the start line, everyone happy and laughing and high-fiving, and it's good. That's a great feeling after 8 months of training and all that work to finally get on the start line. And then you go, and then you're off, and you're in no man's land. You're starting out on this race, you've got 100 plus kilometers ahead of you, and really the first few kilometers it was there, I was really enjoying myself. We started really slowly. Our goal was to finish. Weren't too worried about time, although we had to do it within the 21 hours cut-off point, so that was the worry on time, that if we went too slow we wouldn't finish within the right time. But we started off really slow. The rain had stopped about half an hour before the race, an hour before the race. I mean, it had poured down with rain literally overnight, so we got a window to get away. And what can I say? The first kilometers, fantastic. First stop about kilometer 15, absolutely fine. But there was a lot of humidity, and it was about 15 degrees, very humid. So what happened was, I mean, we were absolutely soaked indeed. And because it had rained so much, there was a few river crossings which normally there's no water there, but because of the rain we actually had to go through water to cross the rivers. So that was kind of unexpected, but a little bit of fun. And yeah, so we were soaked, but there was a stop at 30 where we had change of clothes. So, and luckily I had to change shoes as well, so we were able to change everything and dry off. I'm feeling fine, eating a little bit of food, and then we got going again, but literally within 5 or 10 minutes we were absolutely soaked again, completely soaked from the humidity. But luckily at that point it was still relatively warm, so we weren't really feeling any effects. I mean, it was all good. We were walking up hills, running down hills, and it was a great day out, all the way up to about the marathon point. All fine, all feeling good. Slowest marathon that I'd probably ever run, but I was definitely ready for the first marathon. But then we had the mountains ahead of us, and you could see the rain clouds coming in, and as we got closer to the mountain it started to drizzle and the rain started to come down, and it was at that point where I actually started to get cold. First noticed on my knees, and then again it didn't matter if you had a rain jacket on, everything got wet, but it was still enjoyable, all good up until 50k, the halfway point. We had a stop, we got food, but it started to get harder to take in solid food, starting to get a little bit nauseous. Now the nausea can come from various different angles. I mean, one, if you're starting to get near hypothermia, you start to get nauseous. The other way is that the blood is going from your stomach, it's going to your legs, and you haven't got the blood in your stomach to help process food. Your stomach is shutting down, all systems are going to move your legs, so eating's tough. The other way is if you're running out of salt, you can also get nauseous as well. When I was taking salt tablets, I was eating crisps, but yeah, it was definitely getting harder to eat solids. Then we effectively set off on the second half, and the rain came down and we were getting cold, very, very, very cold. Luckily at 65 there was another change of clothes waiting for us, and we spent a long time at that stop. My legs were starting to hurt a bit, managed to get a massage in there, which was good. Did take down some solid food, but going into that stop, I have to say I was 50-50 about continuing. We had the big ascent ahead of us, it was getting cold and wet, and I was feeling sick. My hamstrings were starting to hurt, not used to that vertical ascent. But I think we probably took nearly an hour to change, to eat, and warm up. Luckily we were on the inside of a gym, had the heating on, and that got us warm. So after that pit stop, I felt like new indeed, and decided to go for it and finish the last marathon ahead of us with a kind of 15-kilometer ascent. The idea being is you do that ascent and then it's downhill. The idea that there was 24k downhill at the end sounded good at the time, but we'll get to that in a minute. So with the dry clothes on, started going up the mountain, but it was a fast walk pace. We couldn't run up that mountain. Fast walking, trying to eat something, but the sickness, the pain in the legs getting worse and worse. But the goal, get to the top of the mountain, psychological point, 80 kilometers. And we power marched. We used our poles. The poles were great to give us a rhythm. We kept a rhythm up and marched our way to the top of the mountain, which was starting to get exposed, and the wind, well, we were in the cloud and the wind was coming across and it was absolutely freezing. Very quick stop at the top of the mountain to get some food, to a checkpoint, and then to start the descent, which was in your head psychologically good. And as I started the descent, I had a little blister on my toe. The rest of my feet were good. I'd covered my feet with anti-blister patches and they worked really, really well. Totally, well, perfectly. But on my toes, starting to get a little blister, and I literally, the decision was stop and fix the blister or freeze in the cold. And to be honest, it was easier to handle the pain of the blister than to stop and get cold. So I kept going. We just started going down the hill and we were very, very tired. Very tired. Probably the point where it wasn't so fun. And then suddenly my hamstring, I felt twang, and I felt a muscle go, a pulled muscle. My hamstrings were cold, we were tired, and we'd just done a huge ascent, and yeah, I pulled a muscle. And for a split second I thought, that is it, that's the end of my race at kilometer 80. And then no, we're going to do this thing, and I shut off the pain in my head and just kept going. Now I found it easier to shut off pain than I did the nausea, and the nausea was still there. I could handle the pain, but nausea is something different. But we kept going into the forest on this descent. The descent didn't help. By that time in the race, you're so tired. A descent is just as bad as an ascent. I mean, you have to work hard every step of the way. It was dark, we could barely see where we were treading, so it was hard work. And there, as the sun had gone down, it was getting dark, we started to hallucinate. So I would see objects flying towards me. I saw kind of Dracula-like figures, huge, enormous vulture-like figures. I even saw Bambi. As I got closer to these things, it was like, yeah, it was a bush or branches of a tree. I mean, we were so tired. We really hadn't slept for a long time. So we got into this sort of zombie-like state. It was very difficult to, text our family who are waiting for us at the finish line. It was difficult to think, to process, to calculate, to do basic math, trying to add up how many kilometers to the next checkpoint or how long we'd got left. And really, I didn't really have any idea, and I didn't actually realize just quite how long I had left. I mean, when you think you got 20 kilometers, a half marathon, in your head you think that's 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours when you're running, but when you're shuffling down a mountain it's more like 4 or 5 hours. But we'd given ourselves a margin of 5 hours. We sort of planned 16 hours with 21 hours finish time, so we started sort of using up some of those 5 hours times. They were like our lives, our 5 lives. I mean, we had plenty of margin, so we were okay. We just had to keep moving. But even that, towards the end, you started to get a bit disorientated. You weren't sure what you were doing some of the time, but you knew all you wanted to do was finish that, get to that goal. That was really the main focus. And the body and mind, it just became focused on achieving that goal. Pretty much everything else was shut out of your head, and it was step, keep moving. As we got towards the end, we'd go off the mountain. It actually warmed up, so it wasn't so cold. And in zombie-like fashion, we made it to the finish line. And seeing that finish line, absolutely amazing. One of the most amazing experiences of my life. Absolutely incredible. I don't know how to describe it, but when you've been working so long for a goal and suddenly you see that goal in front of you and you achieve it, absolutely magic. Magic, standing on the podium with their medals, looking out at our family who'd done an amazing job of supporting us. They'd suffered too, quite a lot as they drove across the mountain in thick, dense cloud, and they realised that we were running in that as well. It was pretty tough on them emotionally, whilst it was tough on us physically. So at that finish line, I needed to get in my dry clothes, but they were 2 kilometers away, so I had to wait while someone went to fetch them. And during that period I started to get a bit cold. I was starting to get hypothermia, but I kept myself just warm enough, put the thermal blanket on, which did a great job reflecting the heat back into my body. And then finally my clothes arrived and I put them on and I was fine. So got home, went straight to bed, and the next day mentally I was absolutely great. Physically I was tired obviously, and I pulled a muscle in my leg, and that took a while. That took several weeks to recover, but apart from that, all good. And I was on a high for at least 2 weeks, a real high based on the achievement that we'd just done. And to be honest, it's getting on for 2 or 3 months after, and every time I think about what we've just done, yeah, it's an amazing sensation. So all in all, absolutely tough, crazy, but well worth the experience. What could I have done better? It was difficult because training was very, very hot in the summer. I was probably doing 220 kilometers a month. I think 300 would have been better. I was training on some hills and trails, but just not enough of them. You know, I would recommend it for the type of course that we'd done. Even before serious training, spent 6 months out on the hills, out on the trails. I was more of a road runner. They are completely different sports, completely different muscle sets, but fantastically enjoyable, an amazing experience. Officially, according to my wife, I'm never allowed to do something like that again, but something inside you says, I think I could do that better. And maybe, just maybe, in a couple of years I'm going to have to go back and give that another go.